For this video, we're going to be looking at lesson 2.4, buy, rent, or lease, focusing on examples. So example 1, we have a luxury vehicle rental company depreciates the value of its vehicle each year over 5 years. At the end of the 5th year, the company writes off a vehicle for its scrap value. The company uses a depreciation rate of 40% a year. A car is 2 years old and has a value of $43,200. What was the original price of this vehicle, and what is the scrap value of this vehicle? So what we're going to do for this one is I'm going to make myself a chart. And so we have the first year, the second year, the third year, the fourth year, and it gets made into scrap on the 5th year. And so for each column, I am going to write what the start value of it was, so what was it at the beginning of the year and what it is at the end of the year. And so our vehicle, a car, is 2 years old, so that's the end of the second year. It's $43,200. Now, there is some quick math that we can do in questions like this to make it faster and easier for ourselves. Is in this case, it depreciates by a rate of 40%. So what that means is if I take 100 minus that 40, which is 60, the value that it is at the beginning of the next year, or when it depreciates, is actually 60% of what it was originally. So when I go this way, I'm going to times by 0.60, and that will give me the value going into the next year. So at the beginning of year 3, it's going to still be the 43,200. And then I'm going to take my calculator, multiply it by the 43,200, times it by the 0.60. So the new price is going to be 25,900. So I'm going to write that down, 25,920. And that'll be the start of the 4th year. And so then I'm going to multiply by the 0.60 again. Now it's 15,552. And then, so that would be the beginning of the 5th year, it'll be the same amount. And then take my calculator, times it by the 0.60 again, and we get $9,331.20. So $9,331.20. So that's going to be one of the values we need here. That is our scrap metal value. But it also wants to know what we were at the beginning. So what's going to happen now is that to go down, I was multiplying by 60. So to go backwards, I'm going to divide by the 0.60. So I'm going to start again at that 43,200. And to figure out what it was at the beginning of the year, I'll divide by the 0.60. So I get 72,000. Which is the same as the end of the year. And then I'll divide by that 0.60 one more time to figure out what it was at the beginning. So 120,000. So at the beginning, this vehicle was worth 120,000, and by the end of the 5 years, it's only worth $9,331.20. Now, for example 2, this is the one that, honestly, is the most difficult when it comes to this unit, just because there is a lot going on. And so we'll take our time. And again, this is definitely one of those questions that you have to read slowly. So we have 2 couples made different decisions about whether to rent or buy. So you have Don and Pat are renting the house for $1,500 per month. They plan to renew the lease yearly. Helen and Tim bought a house for $249,900. They have negotiated a mortgage of 95% of the purchase price, so they'll need a 5% down payment. The mortgage is compounded semi-annually at 5.5%. has a 20-year term and requires monthly payments. After 3 years, both couples decide to move. Helen and Tim discover that the value of their house has depreciated by 10% over the 3 years. So we're going to compare each group's situation after 3 years and what their housing choices have cost them. So we're going to start with Don and Pat. They have the easier one because they're just renting, so it's $1,500 per month, and they're going to do this for 3 years. So you take their rent amount, times it by 12 to get business 12 months in a year, times by the 3 years, and so that works out to be $54,000. And so they're going to spend $54,000 altogether. So now we're going to do Helen and Tim, and this is the one that's going to take a while. So for Helen and Tim, okay, they are buying a house. So first of all, when you're buying a house, you have to figure out how much the loan is going to be. So they have $249,900 is the price of the house, but they have negotiated a mortgage of 95%. So that means they have a 5% down payment. So I got to figure out what the down payment was. So I'm going to take the $249,900 times it by the 0.05. And so that works out to be $12,495. So they're going to pay $12,495 up front. So then that'll be the down payment. Headers are going to become your friend for this one. Okay, so the next one is our loan amount. So how much is the loan going to be that they are going to get from the bank? So I'm going to take the price of the house minus the down payment. And so you minus those, you will get $237,405 will be the loan amount. So now we need to know what our monthly payments are for this mortgage. So basically, because we're not going to the end of this loan, because it's a 20-year loan, but we're going to quit after 3 years, I want to know how much they actually spent in monthly payments, how much money went towards the loan. So I first have to figure out what that's going to be. So I'm going to go to my loan calculator, make sure that my things for the long period is amortization. So our loan amount was $237,405. Okay, so for the number of payments, for a mortgage, you're doing monthly payments, and it's for 20 years. So 12 times 20 would be $240. So I'm going to put 240. My interest rate for this one was 5.5%. My payment amount is unknown. I am paying monthly, but I have a semi-annually mortgage. My dates should be a month apart, which they are. I hit calculate. And so so our monthly payments for this is the $1,624.78. So I'm going to write that down. So our monthly payment was the $1,624.78. And now I want to know how much they spent, if they spent that each month for 3 years. So I'm going to times that one by 12 and then times it by 3. So we have 1,624.78 times 12 times 3. And so they are going to spend $58,492.08. But when it comes to having a um, mortgage, the idea is once you're done living in it, you sell it and then you get some of your money back. That's why most people buy a house over renting, because they build a thing called equity, and when they sell their house, they should get something back. So we have to figure out how much money did they actually get back. So what I need to know is how much loan is left. So how much do they still own the bank when they leave after 3 years? So how you figure that out is you go to your payment schedule for your amortization, and we're looking at what is left on the loan after 3 years. Oh, I went too far. At the end of 3 years, we still have $215,000, $215,992.51. I'm going to write that down. So $215,992.51. So that's how much they still owe the bank at the end of the 3 years. Okay, now we're going to do the house worth. So this is what they're going to sell the house for when they're getting rid of it. And this will let them, this will be stacked up against the loan. So for this one, they have, let's see, after 3, Helen and Tim discovered that the value of the house is depreciated by 10%. So 10%, their house is worth less, 10% less, or 90% of what it used to be. So I'm going to take the original price of the house, the $249,900, times 0.9%, because it's worth 90% of what it originally was. And maybe what I'll do, we're done with the loan calculator, so I will expand again, make it easier to see. So if you times by 0.9, you get 224,910. So their house is now worth 224,910. So the money that they gained for selling their house, I'm going to take what it's worth, so the $224,910 minus what's still left on the loan, so the $215,992.51. And what's left over is the money that they're actually getting back. So this is what they're gaining. So we're going to minus the 2. And it's worth $8,918. So they get just under $9,000 back from their house. So to figure out the cost, or how much they actually spent, so this is our final stage here, you will take the amount that they paid, so the total paid, plus the down payment, because that's money that they already spent, minus the money gained. Because yet again, the money gained is going back into their pocket, so it doesn't count as spent. So the total paid with their monthly payments was $58,492.08, plus their down payment. That was this $12,495, minus the money that they made, so the $8,918. And what that ends up being is over what they actually spent in the 3 years that they lived in the house. So it was 58,492.08 plus 12,495 minus 8,918. So overall, they spent $62,069.08. So a bit more than what Don and Pat paid for just renting. So in summary, when renting, leasing, and buying, you often need to make payments up front. Some payments go toward the overall cost, such as down payment on a house or a lease deposit and the first and last month's rent. Other deposits, such as rental damage deposits, are refunded at a later date. Appreciation and depreciation affect the value of a piece of property and should be considered when making decisions about renting, buying, or leasing. Equity can make buying a house a form of investment.